Hey y'all, hey, it's Tracy time. Time for another moment with me, Tracy T. It's a fabulous Friday here live at lunch. I hope that you are having a marvelous day. I hope that the sun is shining, whether it's in the sky or in your heart, because I'm going to tell you something. This is another day we got a chance to do it. You are in for a special informative treat today. This is a true gift for us that we have been joined by the one and only Corey Strong. Now, you all know that Corey was with me before earlier in the year. We've had two pandemic visits from Corey Strong, and I'm so grateful for it. Corey is a dynamic individual. He has been a servant of the community and is uniquely qualified to share the information that we're going to cover today. Hey, Corey, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today live at lunch.
And I appreciate the invitation. Thanks.
You know, you can come anytime you get ready. All you have to do is to say, listen, I got something to say, and that's that on that, okay?
All right. I'm holding to it.
Anytime, please do, hold me to it. So now listen, we have had so much information has been shared about the Electoral College with voting, the popular vote, the confusion that people have about, my vote doesn't really count and why should I even bother? Because, I live in a state where it's not going to be a deciding factor. So why should I even register? We've heard a full spectrum of things. Some people know the Electoral College exists, not really sure what it means because they hear the word college and think like, huh? And so we had an opportunity on the weekend to review this information that you shared with us at church, at Freedom's Chapel Christian Church. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a wealth of information. Like, we need to tell everybody, this needs to be on repeat to folks to educate them. But before we get into the information, I mentioned that you're uniquely qualified. Tell them, because we always want to establish our expertise. Tell people what makes you uniquely qualified to share this information, Corey.
Well, so first of all, I've been involved locally in politics for quite some time. So I was elected to the state Democratic Party back in 2014. 2017 to 2018, I was the chairman of the local Democratic Party. Y'all remember the Blue Wave in 2018. And so under my leadership, we help elect many of the countywide officials, the county level officials that you guys appreciate right now. In addition, I've served for our federal government for some time, been a implement of obviously our federal government, being in the military for a while, also have a law degree, and so definitely understand our branches of government, how laws are written and made. And so yeah, just a student of it, always curious and wanting to know how we got to where we are today.
Fantastic. Now, if you all heard that and you still think Corey is not in a position to talk about what we're getting ready to talk about, just click off. Go to Google and find it, because you're not going to get a Google opportunity to ask questions. That's why we're here. You all know Live at Lunch is an opportunity for us to connect, to share information, to employ each other to action and to grow. So this is it. We are getting ready to get a fantastic lesson. So for those of you have lunch, chew and listen, chew and chill. We got to come up with a thing for lunch, because they say lunch and learn, but I think that's been trademarked now. So we're not going to say that. What we're going to say to Corey is that we want you to sit down and take this in, because this is information that I want you to not only get for yourself, but to share with others. That is the key. That is why it's so important. And Corey, before we finish today, I want us to talk about the importance and significance of having these seats, because people often allow themselves to think that this presidential election is the most important. And we know that who you put in these seats is really what's driving the force behind a lot of what we see today. So we're going to touch on that in this ACB, but only just a little bit in terms of how we connect the dots from us sitting in our seats at home to how the government is connected to the president and this ACB nomination. Okay. All right. Great. Where do you want to start?
So you started with the Electoral College, and I think that's an important place to start, because a lot of people are confused about it. In fact, my great aunt, she called me, now Corey, I've been voting for a while. What's this Electoral College they talking about? How does this work? And so I think a lot of people don't maybe understand the history of it and why it's important. There's a lot of conversation about getting rid of it, but it's worth discussing. So I start off there. Briefly, we have for people, just the high school civics government lesson, we have 3 branches of government. We have a legislative branch, which is at the federal level, which is Congress. We have an executive branch, which is the president and all of the federal offices, you know, departments, Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, Department of Labor, Department, et cetera, Department of Education. And then you have a judicial branch, right? So when the Constitution was written, it was written because we came from a monarchy in England where the king was more powerful than everybody else. And so we moved to a system where we want all 3 branches of government to have checks on each other. And so when they were writing the Constitution, the conversation was who should elect the president. And there were 2 schools of thought. There's a school of thought that the people, popular vote, the people that go vote should elect the president and should be based off popular vote, which is something a lot of people see now. The other group of people, again, they came from England, and you had a powerful king, and they wanted to have as much of a check on the king as possible. They thought the legislative branch, Congress, should choose the president, right? And so they came up with a compromise, which is called the Electoral College. And so what the Electoral College system does, it gives the states the same amount of power that they have in Congress. They give that same amount of power and same number of people to elect the president. And so you have an Electoral College that is made up of 538 people. How do we get to that number? And that number is, this is all related. You have
I'm sharing the slide now so you can have a visual.
So each state has the same number of electors that they have representatives in Congress, right? So you look at Tennessee, there's an 11 there. We have 9 representatives in the House, and that is based off of the census, which, you know, I know they shut it down, but if you ain't logged into the census or your people haven't, make sure they log in and we get counted. But we have 9 members of Congress. That is our relative power as a state. And so we get 9 electors, people who will vote for the president based off of that. In addition, we have 2 senators. So we get an elector for that, which brings us to the total of 11. And so for every state, if you look at California, 55, that means they have 53 members of Congress, and then they have 2 senators, right? The only addition to make it 538 is in the 60s, they added Washington, D.C. under the 25th Amendment. So Washington, D.C. gets 3, although they don't have a senator or representative of the Congress, they get 3, which is equivalent to all of the small states who have, you know, 1 representative of Congress and 2 senators, right? So that's how you get to 538. And so it gives the same relative power to each state. So it's not congressmen actually selecting it, but it's the same relative power to the states, as opposed to just a popular vote, which might give more power to a state like California and New York over a state like Tennessee and Mississippi and Arkansas. That was the idea of the Electoral College. And so what happens with the Electoral College is it's a winner-take-all system. So if you win a state's popular vote, you get all of the electors for that state. And so state like Massachusetts also has 11. We have the same number of representatives, roughly the same number of people. We get the same number of people. If you win that state's popular vote, you get that number of votes for the president, not the number of popular vote, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but the number of electors that your state actually has. And so some people say, well, like, who are the electors and how does this get chosen, et cetera, et cetera. So when you run for president, you submit a list of electors that are people that are loyal to you and your party. And those individuals have pledged they will vote for whoever wins. If your party wins, they will vote for your presidential nominee, right? And so what happens is that I think the first week in December after an election, the Electoral College of every state meets. The electors for the person that won that particular state, they cast their votes. And then the governor of that state sends that to Congress, and that is actually the process by which they elect the president. Those are the people that actually cast a vote for the president. So if I look at this is actually from 2016. This is the document that the state of Tennessee submitted to Congress saying, hey, here's who we are going to elect Donald Trump on the state. And so you see at the top, those are the electors that voted for the president because he is the one that won the popular vote. So if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see the electors are determined prior to the actual election. Now, sometimes they are selected by the candidate themselves, and sometimes they are selected by the party of that state. So the state Democratic Party, state Republican Party, whatever. So if you look here, you will actually see what the list of electors are for the two top candidates. And in a second, we'll scroll down, but I just want to look here for a second. Those names on the Republican, I don't know none of them folks, so we're not gonna talk about them. But if you look, those were the electors for Hillary Clinton. So had Hillary Clinton won, those are the 11 people that would have voted for her for the state of Tennessee. You see a couple names that are familiar here in Memphis, two strong Black women, Ramesh Akbari, our speaker in the Senate. And then you have Gail Jones Carson, who longtime member of the state party as secretary and part of the Democratic National Committee at large. And so two very, very strong, and other people on this list are very strong electors. If you scroll down, you will see other candidates. So Gary Johnson was a third party candidate. Those are the people that would have voted for them. You see Jill Stein, and there was a bunch of discussion about that. Those are the electors that would have voted, and so on and so forth. And so every state, when you run, you have to submit what your electors are. Your party, Democratic, Republican, or other party would submit it, or the candidate submits it. And those are the people that will cast the vote for the president in the first week of December, which will codify the election. Why does all this matter? So we'll kick it to the next slide. We said 538 electors, which is the number of people we have in Congress and in Senate, plus 3 with Washington, D.C. If you divide 538 by 2, so you get half, you get, the color.
It's coming up. It's just slow.
Okay. And so there it is. So if you divide it 538 electors by 2, you get 269. 269 is half, so you need one more than that, the odd number, and that makes it 270. So 270 is the magic number. So that's the number you hear in the newspaper, whether you got to get 270 electoral votes. That is 1 plus half of the number of votes that are available for somebody, for a presidential candidate. So if you look at this map, you see why we have the conversation about battleground states. And the conversation about battleground states comes up because many of the states are pretty clear who they are going to vote for. And so since it's a winner take all system, it does not matter in a state like California. The Republican Party is not going to spend any money there because that state is safely Democratic, and you don't gain money, you don't gain anything by having more popular votes. Either you're going to win that state or you're going to lose that state. So the focus is to win a state, not by how many, but just winning a state. Same thing in a state like, unfortunately, Tennessee. Tennessee is strongly Republican. And so a lot of people ask the question, is it important for me to vote? And I'll get to why it's still important for you to vote later. But is the Democratic Party going to spend a lot of money to win the state of Tennessee? No, because it is likely going to go Republican. And so they go to states where the margin is close, where I think I can get the electors, which means I can win the majority of the vote. If I don't think I can win the majority in that state, I'm not going to spend ad dollars there. I'm not going to do a lot of organizing there. And it's just a numbers game based off the Electoral College. And so another question that was asked, and I think this is an important one, is, okay, well, how do you win the Electoral College if you lose the popular vote? And so I have just a short example of how that works, and this map kind of points to it a little bit. But the example I have is one using the state of Tennessee and Massachusetts as an example, right? So you saw earlier, Tennessee and Massachusetts have the same number of electors. We both have 11 electors, right? And so just imagine that roughly 3 million votes are cast in both states. It's somewhere close to that number, okay? So imagine in Massachusetts, the Democratic person wins a bunch of the votes, right? And so they win 10 million votes, 2 million votes in that state, and the Republican vote only gets 1 million, right? The Republican candidate only gets 1 million. So total 3 million votes cast, Democrats win, you get 11 electoral votes. Now let's go look at Tennessee. So let's say the Republican does well, but not quite as well. Let's say Memphis and Nashville show up and we get some strong Democratic showing. Let's show up for Marquita Bradshaw. Let's make sure we support her. So she shows out, does her thing, but the Republicans still win, right? They cast 3 million votes in Tennessee. So the Republican gets 11 electoral votes. But if you look at the popular vote, you have the same number of electoral votes, 11 on one side, 11 on the other side. But if you look at the popular votes, there were 500,000 more Democratic votes because it's a winner-take-all system. And so if you look at states like California, New York, that are very, very blue states and that have very, very high population numbers, well, they're going to run up the popular vote totals in those states. But you can win by 90% or you can win by 0.5%. But that number or margin, the number of popular votes does not change how many electoral votes you get. So if you, all of those things play together, so you can understand how somebody can win the popular vote but lose the election. If you look at 2016, the Democrats, the states that they won by a lot. But if you look at some of those battleground states, the states that our president won, he won by a very, very, very small margin. And so you can see why there's a very large electoral college, or there was a very large popular vote split versus the electoral college, which went to their president. And so I think that is just a kind of overview of what the electoral college is. And so then the question is, should we have the electoral college or should we not have the electoral college? And I think there's arguments for both sides. The primary argument for keeping the electoral college is what we've always had, which is it does not give a disproportionate advantage to states like New York and California. And so, for instance, right now they don't care about Tennessee because Tennessee is solidly red. However, if you switched from an electoral college to a popular vote system, you would see them go to the most populated states. So they will go to Georgia, they will go to Florida, they go to Texas, they go to New York, they go to California, they go to the Illinois, they go to the states that have the highest population, and they will fight for every vote they could get in those states. And the smaller states will get left out. So in either system, if you're in Tennessee, then you're second hand, if anything, because you're going to go to the state with the most people because you're looking for the number of votes you can get. And so they'll just.
I pulled the color map back up, Corey, so people see. I think that gives you a really good snapshot, right, of where we are, because we hear so much, especially if you hadn't had. First off, that was the way that you just delivered that information was so concise and it was so clear and easy to digest and understand. I'm going to literally play it again and again for people to see. So thank you for that. But now here's a question I have, because people who may not have had previous knowledge about the Electoral College, right, look at this and what they hear is, we know that the incumbent and the candidate-elect are spending a lot of time in Pennsylvania. We know that they're spending a ton of time in Florida. We know that Ohio, we always hear that Ohio is one of the key states that helps decide the election. Like if you get Ohio, that's the state that pretty much predicts who the president's going to be. What is that? Because you see that Ohio only has 18 versus California, who has 55. So explain how that works.
So the reason they're in Ohio is because Ohio is competitive. If I go spend money as a Republican in California, I am wasting that money. Why? Because that is a very, very liberal state, and there's no amount of money that is going to get me over 50%. But Ohio is different. And if you see these yellow states, and there's similar states, and some of the states weren't always yellow, they are yellow. So, 10 years ago, Georgia and North Carolina weren't yellow, they are now, right? Iowa has always been a toss-up state. Ohio's been a toss-up state. We're saying Pennsylvania is blue in this chart. There's some that say Pennsylvania is a toss-up state, and Florida is always a toss-up state. And so you look at Iowa, it's only got 6 votes, but it's a state that is competitive, and 6 votes in a close election can matter, right? And so those are the reason they're spending time in those states is because it can go one way or the other. So spend time in the states where you think you can win, and California is not one of those states. It's also why the Democratic Party is not putting a lot of money in Texas, right? Like they've had some good candidates down there, but we still don't think we're going to win Texas. Now, demographics may change that over time, but until there's a clear showing, hey, Texas is going to change. They're not going to put a lot of money in Texas, right? And so both parties have chosen the states that we're comfortable in. You don't see Republicans in Illinois. You're not going to see a bunch of Democratic money in Louisiana or Arkansas, right? And so because of that, the toss-up states are the ones they focus in, right? And those numbers are really important. But also, if you start looking at like the largest states for vote counts, you got California and Texas up top. Then you got New York, and then when you, but before you get to but the next several states, you got Florida, you got Pennsylvania, you got Ohio, you got Georgia, you got North Carolina, that are all above, 15 electoral votes. So those are not only toss-up states, they're also states with large populations with large numbers of votes that go with them, right? And so it just happens to be both. And so they're spending money in states with a lot of electoral votes that they can possibly get.
And it's possible, Tennessee has had a lot of conversation for this election, at least this election season. I can say for us over here in our little neck of the woods in West Tennessee, we've always been very blue. It's not demonstrated on here, y'all, but the western part of the state of Tennessee is as blue can get. It's the deepest, darkest blue that would be available on this color map, okay? But because the state overall is red, we're showing red. But there's been talk about Tennessee and some other states, and Texas is really a kind of a demonstration of this on this map, where Texas used to be solid red. It was deep, dark red, and now it's pink. And so there's been conversation about people flipping states, that you can flip states from one color to another. What are your thoughts on Tennessee? Since we're Tennesseans, what are your thoughts on Tennessee having some momentum gained now to flip to either be a light shade of pink or just a little bit purple?
So I think the thing that we have to consider about Tennessee, and I think this is important, and you see it in South Carolina, and South Carolina is a good model for where Tennessee can go. In South Carolina, you ran a candidate who had, first of all, you had a very unpopular candidate. And I think people have to understand and recognize, Doug Jones won in Alabama. I mean, Doug Jones is the person that brought, white supremacists and and race-based terrorists in Alabama to justice, right? So he's an attorney general, and he brought those people, killed those girls in the building, brought them to justice, right? So he had a clear civil rights record and a great record as an attorney in Alabama. But he won not because he was great and because of his record and because of things he'd done in Alabama. He won because people really, 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 really hated the person he was running against. And the reason that Jamie Harrison in South Carolina is doing well is because they really, really, really dislike the person he's running against, who's flip-flopped a lot. But you still had to have a person of great character who people knew and had been established in the community at a state level. People across the state knew who Doug Jones was before he ran for office. You had Jamie Harrison, who was formerly the state party chair of South Carolina's Democratic Party, and was a member he was a general counsel for the Democratic National Convention. And so you have to kind of have two things going on to kind of flip the script and get people to wake up. Is you need to have a candidate that people don't really like, and the one that's running right now, Haggerty, we don't love him, but he is what it is. Blackburn, however, is a person that potentially, when she comes back up in 4 years, that's a person you can go after because she's not particularly well liked. But then you need a Senate candidate who has some name credibility in the community where people can say, I know that person, I like that person.
Right.
That's why people believed in Bredesen. But Bredesen was probably a little bit too long in the tooth. Right. Like he kind of passed his time. And so, who those people are in Tennessee, I'm not going to speculate and say a name.
Right.
But you need someone with that type of credibility where people are like, this is great. I think the other piece of it is, and this is for Democrats to have the conversation about, if you look at candidates who, if you want to run a very, very, very liberal candidate for office, great. Do that in a liberal district that is safely Democrat. But if you want to run in a purple district, half red, half blue, you need to run a candidate who speaks to both sides. I know that is not cute to say. I know people don't like to hear that, but at the end of the day, I can't send the most liberal person in the world to a VFW outside of Murfreesboro where they just built a plant and speak to that union hall, right? And what I will tell you is was the genius of Barack Obama. And I will be clear that I have been critical of Barack Obama in some places, but I've also there's no way to underestimate what he has meant to this country and our community. But the thing Barack Obama could do was Barack Obama could walk into a VFW meeting hall or a union hall in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and he could walk out of that place and the people in that union hall would say, you know what? I believe in that man.
Right.
And so you have to have a person that can do that, right? That can go into any place, talk to any group of people, including people on the other side of the aisle in a state that's like Tennessee that's red. And so we need to start running candidates like that who have made a name for themselves in the community. I'm an attorney. I work at a bank. I'm on the school board in these other parts of the state. And then they, you know what, this person's messed up, but I like this person. They've gone to my church and yeah, they're Democrat, but they're a good person and I'll vote for them. And once you start doing that and having two people actually make a credible argument to them, that's how you start flipping some of these areas of the state. And that's how you get to a place where Jamie Harrison, who can go to any place. I grew up in a trailer home and I made something of myself, and people in South Carolina are resonating with that message. I was a poor kid who made it out and I worked hard for it. And people in South Carolina on the other side of the aisle, like, you know what, that's a good man and I like his story. And so that type of story resonates, and you need somebody like that in Tennessee to get some attention. So
we talk about, and best of luck. We're sending positive energy to you in the universe, Jamie. Hope that all
go to Jamie Harrison, donate. And I'll say this really quick for Jamie Harrison. When Jamie Harrison was on the DNC, when I became the party chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party, we took over and we were trying to rebuild something here. The DNC sent a group of people down. Jamie Harrison is the person that came down to represent the DNC here in Memphis. I met him, came to several meetings, spoke to members, Democrats here who are activists here early on. This was well before he was going to run for Senate or anything like that. Years out, was going and doing the work of strengthening local parties throughout the country. And I think that is something so support that brother, because he supported me as a party chair and supported our party when we needed it early on. And so please support the brother. Yeah. So we have a vested interest in Jamie Harrison. We want to make sure that he gets the support. For those of you that are in his state and out of his state, your dollars can go in and support him. He needs the help. We need to get Lindsey Graham out of that. I mean, just knock him out of the water altogether. They are so close too that every amount of support that you can offer to Jamie Harris is appreciated. So that's great. I didn't know that he had come here, Corey. So I appreciate you sharing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's really good. Now let's talk about this underdog that we want to make the surprise, the 1-2 knockout, Marquita Bradshaw. Perfect example of having someone that people like Haggerty, but Marquita, she kind of came in and was the surprise. So now we have an opportunity to really do something with this. What is your take on it?
It is super, super important that people get out and support Marquita. And here's what I would say. I'm gonna echo something that Senator Ackberry said in reference to her. Nothing's impossible, but this race is kind of close. That being said, if you look up to St. Louis and see that upset that happened up there in the Democratic primary, that was not the first time Cori Bush ran. She ran several times. And so she built her name recognition, her credibility, and people started to resonate with her, right? This is Marquita's first time. And she ran against a candidate who had been running prior to and had statewide appeal. But guess what she did that he didn't? She went to Democratic bases and appealed to them, appealed to issues that were important to him, and they elected her in a primary. She won the primary. She worked the boat off. I know she went up to Knoxville and was collabing. She went to Chattanooga and Nashville and got in those bases and said things that resonated with those people. And the environmental justice piece is so important right now. Having a planet and a community we can turn over to our kids is super important.
Yes.
And let's talk about the number of reasons that environmental justice plays into our kids, how it affects learning disabilities, how it affects health in our community, particularly for Black people. Environmental justice is super, super important because our kids go read the Freddie Gray case of how he got to where he was because he grew up with a learning disability, because he grew up in a lead-based house, and how that
That's
affected him mentally and led him down a road that had him interacting with the police. That happens to a lot of our children in our communities. So Marquita is speaking to that, and it's resonating all over the state. I think it's super important. But why it's important to vote for her, even if we don't think she's going to win. And her sign's in my yard right now. So let's be clear, we support her.
Yes.
But what's important is, if you want to demonstrate to the DNC and to national donors that Tennessee is a state worth investing in, the number of people that show up and vote for Marquita is what will convince them, that race in Tennessee was closer than we thought it was going to be. Maybe Tennessee needs more investment. Maybe Tennessee needs more organizer. Maybe Tennessee needs more on the ground training. Maybe Tennessee needs more advertising. Maybe Tennessee needs more candidate training and grooming. Maybe Tennessee needs more operatives supporting their candidates. That is the type of thing that makes people pay attention and say, we weren't looking at that state, but these numbers kind of did something different. I kind of was a little bit untrue. Although the DNC is not investing fully in Texas the way it does, it's investing a little bit. And why is it investing some? Because Beto O'Rourke made that a race. So when he made it a race, they said, maybe Texas is not as red as we thought it was. And if you look at it, it's not dark red, it was light red on that map that you showed, because a candidate demonstrated. So showing up for Marquita is the thing that makes Tennessee, to your point of your last question, a place that the DNC be like, we need to look at that place because maybe we can get active and do things there. In addition to that, I think it is important, the places that elected Marquita and the places where there are Democratic strongholds are our urban areas. And we have so very little representation from our urban areas that look like us, right? In the state of Tennessee, close to 30% of, over 25%, close to 30% of our citizens are Black. As is the case in most of the southern states, you have a plurality of Black residents, Mississippi being the highest of over 40%. Do you see any Black elected officials at the federal level? You do not, right? And so supporting someone like her also will motivate areas like Nashville and Chattanooga and Knoxville, and especially here in Memphis and Shelby County, to say, we want people that look like us, that represent us, because those Democratic votes are coming from people that look like us. And so they should be electing someone who understands the issues in our communities. That is not to say that someone who does not come from our community can't represent us, but to say it's really, really damn hard to do that, right? Unless you walked in my shoes and you walked in my skin. And so supporting her will not bring attention from the outside, but also motivate people from the inside of, I want to see somebody that looks like me and pull the lever at that ballot box for somebody from my community. And her story is pretty amazing. And it deserves your support, your money, your votes. Call your people. We need to get her and vote for Marquita to turn out. So people know we serious here in Memphis and Shelby County.
That's it. That's right. And I always say this, and it drives some people crazy and other people understand. Corey, you'll get this. Pookie and Pork Chop, y'all go vote and vote for Marquita, because she represents us. She represents our community. I always tell, it's a whole, and we laugh. I've laughed and been told, you don't categorize a group of people. That's not a group of people, right, Corey? I know a Pookie and a Pork Chop. I'm telling them right now, for Pookie and Pork Chop, go vote, number one. Go vote, and then make sure you vote for Democrats. If you have questions, there's a way, there are resources that will help you understand how to look at the ballot and how to get educated about who to vote for. And if all else, send me a message. I will help you. I will help you go through and understand how to process your ballot and how, when you go in, what to vote. If for first-time voters, Corey, what would you tell someone that's a first-time voter in terms of what they should expect?
So I'm gonna go to the first time voter. I'm gonna answer first time voter, but then I'm gonna go something else you just said.
Okay.
For first time voter, if you have just registered, it's your first time showing up to the polls. Anytime that you're a first time voter, you're gonna need to show up to the polling location with a photo ID. And a photo ID is a government ID with your name and your address on it, right?
That is valid. That is current.
That is current, right? And so you need a Tennessee state ID, driver's license, handgun carry permit, something like that, or a passport, or government ID if you work for the federal government. Like I have my as a reservist in the Navy, I have my military ID card. Those are valid IDs. Anything other than that is not valid.
Your college ID, your employee ID does not work.
So you need a government ID. When you show up to the polling location, you come in. When they come in, you wait in line. When you get to the line to enter the location, there'll be a person there that will check your ID, pull you up in the system, and then they will give you a card. When you go over to a card, you'll take that card to a machine, or excuse me, not to a machine. You'll take the card over to a registration person. They register you. They'll pull you up in the system. They'll make you sign something to say you were there. So you'll sign a sheet of paper. That person will give you a CAT card, so a card with a little code like your credit card, like the card you have for your credit, your debit card. They'll give you that. You will go over to the machine. You'll put it in the machine, and then it will pull up the candidates and it will walk you through step by step. What's important is it is important to either have a plan when you go in to vote of who you're going to vote for, or have some type of document that shows the people that are available on the ballot, because there are malfunctions in the machines sometimes, and it's good to know, oh, these are the people that should be on my ballot, or these are the races that should be on my ballot, to make sure they are on there and make sure that everybody that you can vote for is available on that ballot. If for whatever reason, when you get to a machine, there is an issue at the machine, something is supposed to be showing, you can't see it, it's freezing, you voted for someone, you got to your final screen and the person you voted for is a different name on their final screen, or it's not showing on your final screen of like, this is who you voted for. You know, you confirm with credit card payments, the same thing, confirm the people you're voting for. If you have any issues at any point on the machine, do not press send your vote. Call for someone from the election commission to come over and look at your machine and say, this is not right. I didn't vote for this person. It's not letting me vote for him. It's pulling up a name I didn't pull up. It's not showing me something it's supposed to be showing. Do not cast your ballot. And the term it uses, cast your ballot. Do not cast your ballot until it tells you, hey, everything reads the way it's supposed to read and you have the people available and the person you voted for shows up on that thing. If you have any issues, don't press cast your ballot. Tell them to come over right now and look at this machine to see what's going on. They'll pull it. They'll put you on another machine, make sure it works, and make sure that it has what it has on there. In addition, they will log down, hey, there was an issue with the machine. When you come out of the polls and say it didn't show what it was supposed to show, it's too late. Now you've already cast your ballot. So they need to address it while the machine is broken.
Right. That's good. Let me add to that too, because I think you're going to go back and talk about Puka and Pork Chop. Let me add to that. If you are a first-time voter and you have someone with you and that is also voting, but that will assist you, let them know when you arrive, because there's a form that the person assisting you has to complete, and they will provide that to you. I know that there are some friends of mine who have first-time voters that are parents that went in with their young adults for them to cast their ballot. And there's a form. You just let them know when you get to that point of entry, let them know that you want the parent with you or the person with you, and they will complete that. They will give them that form to complete to show that they were assisted, just because under normal circumstances, you would have to go into your machine alone. And this will give them permission basically to be with you and stand with you, because the idea is that you don't want anyone in your voting ballot to influence your vote unnecessarily. So to make sure that you knew that too, in the event that you don't have a piece of paper or you don't have something with you to say, okay, this is who I should vote for, and I know this is the person that is the right for us and right for me, and you want someone there with you, you can also have that available for you too. Okay. All right, Corey, now go ahead.
So in reference to Puka and Pork Chop. So here's what I would say. And I think this really is on elected officials, activists, people involved in, creating policy and presenting candidates to us. The reason they don't vote is because ain't nobody talking about what's important to them.
That's right.
I'm just being real.
That's right.
And so I know that it is important for us to get them out to vote, to support people, but they're going to vote generally because they ain't heard about. Now, Marquita's a little bit different. She is talking about stuff that matters.
Yes.
Puka and Pork Chop, but because it doesn't matter to the important people, the establishment, they're not broadcasting her message. And since they're not broadcasting her message, guess what? It's not getting the Puka and Pork Chop.
Right.
And so we have to start ensuring that the things that are important to us, that we require our elected officials to address those things, right?
Yep.
You tired of poverty issues in your neighborhood? You tired of education issues in your neighborhood? You tired of lack of economic opportunity in your neighborhood, and you don't see it growing and moving and changing? We have to start requiring that our elected officials actually do those things. And so what I will say is right now, anticipate this for me. I'm gonna take a little break off since my election, and I had a great time, learned a lot from it. But you know, you gotta take your self-care time, so it's been good. We'll be back at it soon. It is important right now because of what's going on in the White House. So we elect someone that's going to restore faith not only in that office, but faith in our country and our democracy. I think that's super important. And so, yes, team by team, hairs all the way. It's in my yard. I'm all for it. But once they win, all the stuff they told me to shut up about for the past 6 months, I'm not shutting up about it.
Right.
If the healthcare policy ain't good enough, I'm going to say it. If we're giving too much money to corporations, I'm going to say it. If we need to get rid of student loans because we're hamstringing people, we're going to talk about it. So we're not going to say we got Biden, so it's all over with. I am not going to take policies that are not good for my community just because you are a Democrat. And the problem is we've been saying, well, because they're a Democrat, they have a responsibility, just like the Republicans, just like anybody that comes in front of our community to provide for our community. And every other interest group, whether it be immigrants, whether it be the LGBTQ community, whether it be farmers, whether it be a religious Christian movement, whoever, all of them circle the wagons and say, what are you going to do for me?
Right.
We have to do the same thing in Memphis and Shelby County. We have to do the same thing as the Black communities and say, hey, I got it. I voted you in office. Now, what are you going to do?
Okay. Oh my gosh, Corey, you gave me two fantastic lead-ins. Two fantastic lead-ins. We got, this is connected to the Electoral College, you guys. And I'm gonna tell you, everything that happens city and state is connected to the Electoral College. Now, we talked about Marquita Bradshaw and how important it is for her to have our votes. We talked about Jamie Harrison and how important it is for us to support him and for him to have our support, whether we're in his state or not, because we are part of a collective, right? And so two things I want to cover. Oh, I'm so glad you said this, Corey. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'm so glad you did, because here's what we know. Ice Cube, okay? Ice Cube is under a lot of fire right now because of his Black contract with America. You know, the Trump campaign tweeted that, you know, that he worked with us and thanks for your help. And, you know, I think he got played. But here's what I think is about that. And I want your thoughts. And this leads in perfectly to what we talked about with Pookie and Poke Chop and the things that you said about people go in, they have specific asks and some say demands about what happens with the Black vote and what we need to do to earn the Black vote. And then we just say, oh, you're Democrat, so when we know you're for us, you're going to take care of us. Just leave it at that. Now, I'm going to give two sides for where I think on Ice Cube and the whole thing. I'm going to give Ice Cube a half of a pass because he put forth some effort to create a contract for Black Americans, okay? That there was an ask. I'm going to give him half a pass on the positive side that he had the interest to even create it. Now, here's the issue that I have with what he did. The timing, I think, was completely off, Corey, okay? That was number one, because you are in a position where you have a platform where millions of people follow you, support you, love you, are fans of you. You could easily say, go get registered to vote. And we'd have all the Pookie and Poke Chops in the land saying, yep, I'm gonna go register to vote. Just like Snoop Dogg, just like Mike Tyson, Magic Johnson, all those people who said, I've never voted before, you need to get registered, you need to vote. No word from him on that, okay? That's one. Number two, so much of what's in his contract for Black America is already on the forefront of some of the things that are bills that are waiting to be addressed from the Congressional Black Caucus, from the movement from Black Lives Matter and other organizations that had he done what we're saying we need to do now as citizens in the state is rally together and come as a collective for our ask, I think we'd be much further along in that thing. Imagine if Ice Cube had connected with the Congressional Black Caucus and said, I want to put my popularity and celebrity status in with some things that are actual bills. How effective would that be? So now you tell me, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. The half a pass you gave, I think it's fair. I'll just broad out to a broader sense, because your point on the timing is 100% right. Time is problematic, right? Time is, we at election time, it's time to go vote. So that's important. But what I would say is this: large bills, large things that are being executed are most successful when they're bipartisan. And what we need to realize is that things that affect our community need to be bipartisan, period. We need both parties talking about the things that are important to us and supporting them, right? I am not going to give much credit to Donald Trump for the criminal justice reforms that he did, because many of them were superficial. But there was a conversation over the past 2 or 3 years about criminal justice reform, and there were people on both sides of the aisle talking about it, which is why you saw it move forward.
Right.
So as long as we put all of our hopes on one side and we have no conversation on the other side, and that's one of the things that I will give Ice Cube credit for over some of the other individuals who are skin folk but not kin folk, who on the conservative side of the aisles do a lot of finger pointing of what people aren't doing right. The Democrat Party or whatever, you know, the Candace Owens of the world. But have you shown me a substantive plan of something that you're advocating for that's important to us? And at least Ice Cube was doing that. We need to put some money and investment into Black communities to create businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, that is it. Now, the timing is problematic. We got it. The other thing I'll just respond to on the celebrity worship piece of it. Not big on celebrity worship one way or the other. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. Jon Stewart has been pushing for the 9/11 bill. I don't think it gets pushed without Jon Stewart putting a celebrity behind it. But guess what? It took him 10 years to get that done, right? And so, like, you know, so it took a lot of people's work who were in the fire department and police department of New York doing that work with him. So it can't just be a celebrity. It's got to be a group of people advocating for it. The celebrity gives it a voice, but it's the work of those firefighters telling their story, the cancers and the disease they have that got that passed, right? And so it can't just be me showing up, flashing at you and then bouncing. It's got to be a substantive plan written, supported by people doing the work. But the last thing I would say is this, and I think this is super important. Do you think Ice Cube reached out to the president? Do you think the president reached out to Ice Cube? And if the people supporting those bills on the Democratic side of the aisle didn't reach out to Ice Cube, you're telling we don't need you. Now they'll come to you election time and put you on a commercial and say, go vote. But then when it's time to actually push these bills forward, like, I actually want to create wealth in the community. I actually want to grow up the Black community. So let me talk to the influential people in those communities and see, can I actually, they don't do that between elections. They come to you election time, throw some celebrities at you. Because if you really wanted to do it, you would actually be saying, who has the money to invest in these programs? Let's see them be successful, right? So the Beyonce's, a lot of them are celebrities, but non-celebrities as well could be a part of that conversation. Are you talking to people of wealth to actually make these plans grow our community, or is it just to get our vote? And so I'm going to be, you're correct. Timing's bad for Ice Cube, shouldn't have been there. And yes, even though it's good to have a conversation on the conservative side of the aisle to be talking about the things for our community, the timing's bad and doesn't look, I agree with all that. But the other thing too is the Democrats reached out to him. Are they trying to do something substantive to grow it? I'm a card carrier member of the Democratic Party. You used to represent, but like, when you family, you can pick out. I can tell you the problems with my family.
And so to answer your question,
I love my uncle, but I know he can't. So you need to be honest about these things.
So I can tell you, you know, with the uncle. So like in your family, you say, okay, like I had an Uncle Maine, rest in peace, Uncle Maine. But if Uncle Maine was Ice Cube in this point, I'd be like, Uncle Maine, why are you having this conversation? And Uncle Maine would say, if he was Ice Cube in this case, that he did. The Democratic Party had a conversation. So he said that he was going to have a conversation on both sides, and he did. He was on Roland Martin last night, and so I got a chance to have Roland Martin pulls no punches. He's all about having facts and information, and he's going to ask you the questions whether they're hard and you want to answer.
Let me get after it.
He's taking no prisoners, right? And so he did. Ice Cube said that he had conversations with both parties. The difference is that the The Republican Party said, based on what I understood Ice Cube to say, Corey, is, oh, we think that there's some things that we could use in your contract that align with our platinum plan. Okay. And the Democratic Party said, we love 85% of what you got here. It's completely usable. Let's get through the election and revisit it. And so they said, we want to connect with you. We want to do it just at a time where we have, to offer, because we're in the midst of a dang on election. And so to me, for the Trump party to come out now and tweet that, thanks Ice Cube, it's pure propaganda, because I don't think they have any intention on using any part of what he had in his contract for Black America in the platinum plan. But that's my own 2 cents on it. And I think that
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there was an opportunity on the Democratic side of the aisle to say, we have heard from your community, we value your vote, and some people have brought some to us, and we're going to incorporate it.
Yeah.
Because if it was a rich donor, if Jeff Bezos had gave something to the Democratic Party or a rich Democratic donor, it would have immediately been in the plan. We would have changed the plan.
I'm with
but
you.
when we come with something, we'll talk to you later about it. And at the end of the day, no matter which side we talk to, we come up empty-handed at the end. So at the end of the day, we have to be, so I'm going to see if the Democratic Party is going to look at, we'll see in February or March or June of next year if Ice Cube shows up again. We like 85% of the plan. Let's see if the Democrat actually, our party, and that's what I'm saying is, we got to get on the phone after the election's over with and be like, all right now, we elected you, but you was doing some foolishness. And so now it's time to step up and support us. And I think
that's the key. Yeah. So, and that takes us perfectly, Corey, to the last thing, because it's so important for people to understand this election, the presidential election, is vital. It's important. We want you to get in. We need to build back better. It's not an accident. It's almost innate that Corey and I have on blue today. We want to make sure that, and it wasn't planned, it just is what it is. Because if you know that you want this country to be a better place than it is right now, you've got to do your part. But
it's just a new shirt. It's just a new shirt. You know what I'm saying? Just a new shirt, Now go ahead. Give me a little new shirt.
But we have got to make choices that are at the state level, because that is how we get to this ACB foolishness, is it not?
Absolutely.
Okay, talk about that. Talk to us about that just a little bit, because people do not understand that we would not have this foolishness going on now if we had taken an active part in making sure who we had in the Senate truly represented us.
Most definitely. And so, and to be clear, this is previous Senate election, or like, make sure I'm going where you're going with it.
You can talk about any of the Senate elections you want to. I want you to talk about the importance of how we nominate and elect senators that go back to what you said earlier, that represent our community, that truly is speaking on my behalf, because I get to vote for that person, right?
Sure.
I get to decide who goes in and says, here, I'm standing up, and when I cast a vote or I make a decision, it's going to be on behalf of Tracy Rowe and Corey Strong and all the other people that are in my area. That's what I want. That's what I want you to talk about.
So yeah, this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about why it's important to support Marquita and making sure that we have candidates that actually represent our interests. Senate has a very, very powerful position, and that's why we have 2 chambers of Congress. The purse strings, which is the money in the budget, goes through the House, but a lot of those who makes decisions confirming Supreme Court justices and or presidential picks for cabinet, those types of things, those all happen in the Senate. And there's equal power throughout every state, because everybody gets 2 senators, right? And so those Senate elections are super, super, super important. And so back in 2016, we saw a blue wave here in Shelby County, but we didn't see the turnout that we needed to see. And in a state like Tennessee, the Pookies and pork chops are the only route at current for us to get a senator in Tennessee. You have to see tremendous turnout in the urban areas. And what I would say is the best opportunity we've had in my lifetime was our former Congressman, Hereford Jr. And what I would tell you is Hereford Jr. did some incredible things and some Obama-like things in the fact that while he was a congressman, he created relationships in other parts of the state. Right. He had business leaders he talked to in Nashville and in Knoxville when he was making decisions. So he created those relationships. So when he ran a statewide campaign, he was prepared for it.
Right.
And he lost by less than a percentage point. To be very clear about it, he outperformed in Nashville what he was supposed to perform because he created those relationships. He outperformed in Knoxville. He outperformed in Chattanooga. Did he win by the margins he normally wins by in Memphis? Yes. But did Memphis turn out for him? No, they didn't. And so that Memphis had to turn out for him, Herford Jr. would have been our senator, right? So the path to a Senate seat is where the Democratic votes are. And the Democratic votes are in Shelby County, Davidson County, the Hamilton County, like in these urban counties. And if we don't turn out and run up the margins in the cities, we're not going to see the representation at the level. So you're not going to have somebody up there confirming a Supreme Court justice that'll support your support your view of the world and your rights and your liberties as you see them.
Right. So put it in plain talk. In plain talk, Corey, is it safe to say for Pookie and Pochop that if you don't vote for Senate, you might end up with somebody like ACB who will take away your big mama Adia's healthcare coverage, and they won't have any insulin, they won't have any medicine, they won't have any support from the government. It'll be gone.
So, plain words, any number of things that we take for granted can be changed at the Supreme Court level if they rule it unconstitutional. To be clear, we had a Congress, we had a president come up with a healthcare plan, the Affordable Care Act. We had a Congress that approved it, but where did they fight it? They fought it in the Supreme Court. That's where they gutted the law. That's where so the Congress can pass the law and the president can enact and enforce the law. That's their responsibilities. But the Supreme Court decides whether or not that law is constitutional. And so that is why that is so important, because senators are the ones that confirm a Supreme Court justice. In the past, doesn't matter what party you came from, if you're a decent person, we just kind of gave the president who they wanted. It has become more contentious over the past 4 to 6 years to where those votes are going to be close and they're going to matter. And so voting for your senator is important. If we had one from Tennessee, this whole thing would look very different.
Yes, it would. We got a question I'm going to ask you, but I want to get your 2 cents and thoughts on packing the house, packing the court. That's the whole thing now, despite all of what we've known and what we've heard. Now the question comes, do people believe and support in packing the court? What's your take?
I don't support it. And here's what I would say. It would be great to say, what we mean by packing the court is, for a very long time, there's been 9 Supreme Court justices. And so the question is, there's nothing in the Constitution that defines the number of people. So it could be 12, it could be 20, it could be however many you want, right? And there's no law that in the Constitution is silent on it. So you could put more people on the Supreme Court. The problem is, if you put more people on the Supreme Court, when we get a Republican president, they can put more people on the Supreme Court. And the reason that we have a problem with upholding the current Supreme Court nomination is because there are some procedural rules that allowed the minority party in the Senate to delay votes on issues like the filibuster and how many votes you need. Those are procedural rules that exist for a long time. Who got rid of those procedural rules? The Democrats, when they were in power. My party got rid of those rules, and now it's being used against us. We can do the same thing with the Supreme Court. I think the other thing that's most important is being strategic. If we made decisions while people were healthy for people to step down and have them replaced under a president, we wouldn't be in this situation. And so if in President Obama's second term, we were like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's a little bit old and she's going to resign. So if she were to resign and then we replaced her at that time, which we wouldn't be worrying about. And so we wait till people get ready to die and then hopefully they stay alive. We need to start making more strategic decisions about the court seats that we have because they are lifetime. So in a lifetime appointment, your life matters, right? And so had we done that with Thurgood Marshall, done it under a Democratic president and now Thurgood Marshall, we had a Republican president for a long time, so that wasn't available. But like, had we done it then instead of, you might have a Democratic replacement. So I think that's what's important is, let's not wait for these people to pass on to say, hey, it is time for us to make a strategic move. They step down, you allow someone to be appointed. So you keep an even balance on the court one way or the other.
That's good. We have a question. Will the concept of faithless electors be covered? So faithless electors, what are your thoughts on faithless electors?
So faithless elector is this. The way the Electoral College system is designed is when the state party or the candidate chooses their people, those people have said and stated when they were chosen, I am going to vote for you if you win the popular vote. A faithless elector is someone who says, you know what, I changed my mind, I'm gonna vote for somebody else. And we've only had a handful of examples of this happening in history. It doesn't happen a lot, right? To where someone says, you know what, I pledged that I was going to vote for this person, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And in cases where a state party selects electors before the candidate is known, think of a Republican somewhere that says, I'm an elector for my state, and then Donald Trump wins the nomination, they're like, I don't know if I want to vote for this guy, right? Or in the case with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, maybe there's a person that was like, I'm very, very liberal, I'm a Democrat, and they selected Hillary Clinton. They really like Bernie. They're like, I don't vote for Hillary. I like Bernie better still, right? I think that does not happen a lot because what you are functionally and effectively doing is ruining your reputation with the party that you have been in for a long time. So notionally, you have built up some reputation. And so what I would say an example would be is if a Senator Aguirre said, yo, I can't vote for Joe Biden. Obviously, she would never do that, right? But let's just say she didn't. It's going to be hard for her to run for office because they're going to remind people constantly. It's going to be hard for you to be on the state party. It's hard for you to be a donor and support efforts because it's like you were an established person in our party, and then you abandon us. And so that person is making a choice. And so for that reason, they choose people who are very, very, very loyal, and it does not happen often. Handful of times it's happened in history. Don't think that'll happen much. And so particularly in this race, the people that are aligned to Biden are going to be with Biden. People that are aligned to Trump are going to be they're going to be loyal on both sides during this time.
What do you think the likelihood is that we'll have a Republican, or we know that we only need 2 Republican senators to vote against the nomination? What do you think the likelihood of that is?
Low.
It's
pretty low.
Yeah, like 1% low. Yeah.
I think ATB is going to be on the Supreme Court. And so you need to prepare for that.
How do you get prepared for that, Corey? How do you prepare for that?
I don't know. You know, when you get a whooping, you just brace yourself. Can't do nothing about it.
When you get a whooping, though, it only lasts for a little bit. This is a whooping that's going to be in her 30s. These are decades of getting whoopings. We talk about the Affordable Care Act. We're talking about LGBTQ. We're talking about Roe versus Wade. That's a heck of a whooping now.
Right. And so it might bring an opportunity. And so I'll give an example. Some people don't agree with this and don't like it, but I'll say it, right? There's some people that are like, hey, let's keep the Affordable Care out and add a public option. End of the day, every civilized country in the world has a universal healthcare plan. And that was the Democratic plan before Barack Obama became president. Our plan was universal healthcare. Their plan was an exchange. We took their plan and then they moved to the right of nothing, right? So we need to go back to our roots. So maybe she gets rid of the Affordable Care Act. We have the presidency, we have the Senate, we have the House. And we just say, you know what? This is now the time to do it, right? And you pass that law in such a way uniformly to where there's not like, I'm calling something a name that it's not. It's just now the government does it. And the government has the ability, particularly with those 2 branches aligned, of saying, and that's not unconstitutional. It's a constitutional. We have plenty of other socialized healthcare now for certain ages. Let's do it for the whole country. And so you just pass something that they can't interfere with, right? And so I think the other piece is you look at voting rights. Like they're going to destroy the Voting Rights Act. I think that's super important. But guess what? What if we pass a national voting holiday, right? Well, you can't disenfranchise that. We pass a holiday since everybody gets off work, everybody gets to go vote today. Can't disenfranchise that. You can't unconstitutional that, right? And so it gives us an opportunity to be more audacious, potentially, if she is on the Supreme Court. So you can look at it as a problem or look at it as
maybe
this is an opportunity for us to be more audacious for things that will make people's lives better.
Well, I always like erring on the side of positivity and opportunities. I'd like to look at challenges as opportunities. I'm glad you mentioned those two as potential opportunities. But as a short, fat, black, gay woman, it is hard as I don't know what to know that this whooping is coming, Corey, because I literally can talk to my other people in the community and say, oh my goodness, y'all get ready, brace yourselves. We're going to have Biden in office, but we're going to have this woman in the Supreme Court, and she's 39 years old. We have a lifetime, in our lifetime, she will be there, and not wishing anything.
Me and her are the same age.
But that's a lot. That's a whole lot. And we have a bunch of things we got to contend with. And then for the fact that there could be just an absolute revocation of so many hard fought things, it just makes me kind of sick to my stomach. But this goes back to what we talked before, that we got to be engaged, right? We can't just think that voting is every 4 years. Voting occurs in every city and state every year. There's something to vote on. And
the stuff that's important to us here, like one of the things they talked about with Barrett was her stance on Brown v. Board and reversing it. Guess what? School districts are more segregated than they've ever been. And the fight for that is here with our county commission and our city council. It ain't in the Supreme Court. Admittedly, that has implications at the federal level, file the Department of Education, rights for students with disabilities and other things, and how funding is gone. Like, sure, federal government laws do have an implication on it, right?
Yeah.
Right now, we live in a city where 100% of the kids that live in the city of Memphis are in a school district, and the city does not contribute any money to that district.
Right.
Right. Now, they do for early childhood education. So if you're pre-K, you get money from the city of Memphis. If you K through 12, your city does not give any money to and that ain't got nothing to do with the Supreme Court.
Right.
And so being active about issues that impact your community starts with finding an issue that is important to you, understand and know that issue, and you'll realize there's a whole lot more going on in the local level for the issues that matter to you than at the federal level. But you can trace it all the way up and down and be involved in that thing, the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that concerns you, the thing that touches the person who's closest to you, the thing that interests you most. Be involved in that issue, understand that issue, and it'll kind of open up, your aperture to what's going on around you, and it'll keep you informed, because that thing will always, pique your interest and keep you motivated to be involved.
Well, our hope is that you have some good time off for your self-care after your election. Well run, by the way, well run. Bravo, a great job done on your campaign. And I'm looking forward to you revisiting post self-care so we can get back in this thing, because there are a lot of things that are coming up in 2021 that are on the table, the Secretary of State being one of them. And so I know that I've been actively engaged now, because the older we get, the more we realize how important things are. And I want to be able to serve as a conduit of sorts for younger adults to understand how to make the bridge and not be late to the game like I was and so many others are. That, we know that kinfolk ain't kinfolk. All, hello, Clarence Thomas and Candace Owen. So I want to thank you again, Corey, for taking time to be with us today live at lunch. This has been a wealth of information. Was there anything that I did not ask that you said, okay, this is what I want to make sure I say today?
I think we covered everything. Again, I appreciate you for what you do. Thank you for keeping people informed, keeping people engaged, using your platform. And it's awesome to see people. And the more that we do this, the more we can kind of gather and congeal around things that'll be better for our community. So thank you for what you do. And thank you, obviously, for giving me the opportunity. Got a new job. Shout out Freedom Prep, Robin Webb, Black female who started a charter school 11 years ago. And it's the highest performing charter network here in the city. The high school is, if it was compared with Shelby County Schools, it'd be the third best high school that we have there. And so I just started over there as COO. And so ecstatic about that opportunity and be able to work for a brilliant Black woman. So awesome over there. So continue my self-care and trying to get my arms around this new job, but I ain't going nowhere. So
that's right.
So I'll pray and he'll lead me where I need to go.
That's it.
I ain't going nowhere.
That's it, Corey. That's it. If you're obedient, that's it. That's all you got to do is just be ready and follow where he leads you. That's the path. That's the key. I love that. All right, hang tight with me. I'm gonna say goodbye because it's Friday. We made it through the week, y'all. Listen, here's the one thing I can tell you all. You matter to me. You are important. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm giving you a big cyber hug from me to you. Have it and take it and enjoy your weekend. Be engaged. For those of you who have not yet early voted in Shelby County, Tennessee, go early vote. There are even polls open on Saturday. If you need information, like I said, reach out to me or go on Google and find out where your voting polls are. It is important for you to cast your ballot. People have done it early and it has been effective. We've been seeing fantastic photos of people putting their stickers on the forehead this time. I didn't do that, Corey. Did you do that? I didn't know about the sticker on the forehead. I had it on my shirt. Wherever you put it, get a sticker, go vote. Have a fantastic weekend. Make sure you make every day amazing and live like it's a gift because it truly is. Have a great weekend, Corey. Thank you so much.